and welcome to part 5 of the Hope Giver's lesson, Love Not the World. And part 4 ended with some tough medicine. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch it. You need to really go back to part 1 if you haven't, and start at the beginning with note paper. We're in 1 John chapter 2, verse 15 through 17, and we're talking from the subject that John was really strong about: do not love this world. We were ending the last part talking about we need to really viscerally inside of us, not just intellectually, begin to decide who and what defines who we are. If we don't do that, then we're assigning our lives to permanent damages. If we go for God, we get permanent blessings. And so we're talking about the pride of life, the 3 things that he talks about that really ultimately defines worldliness in verse 16: the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. John says here, you've given this epithemia. There's the word again. That's always there. You've got this epithemia that's always there, this undertow in the world. And you've got the lust of the flesh, this is what he's saying, the lust of the eyes, and this empty, braggart, boastful, superficial pride of life. You've got it. What are you going to do with it now? Well, the question I want to ask is this: how do we relate to this world system? How does a Christian be in this world but not of it? Well, we're going through 3 major themes in this series. Number 1, don't love it. That's where it begins. Guard your heart. Don't give the love to the system that only belongs to God. Number 2, we've talked about this one. See it for what it is. Lust of the eyes. Lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, pride of life. And then number 3, live your allegiance. There's this inviting contrast that suddenly comes after he's hammered us in verse 16, in verse 17. Now notice how he bookends all of these 3 verses. Do not love it. Do not love the world. Agapao. Please don't give that uncommon, unconditional, supernatural love that only belongs to God. Don't give it to the world. Don't throw that away. Don't give it to something that is a temporary fix in your life. Don't expect the world to give you uncommon, unconditional, supernatural love. Don't go there. It's empty. It's not going to happen. That's what he's saying. But what you do, he says, what you do, he says, oh, I love this. He says the world is passing away along with all of its desires. Stop right there. Did you catch that first phrase of that verse? Look at it. It's right there in the scripture. He says that strong passion that you have, that you have to just have to get this thing. He says, I want that man. As women would say, I want that man. Guys say, I want that woman. I want that. And I'm going to violate biblical principles to get him. I'm going to violate biblical principles to get her. I want that house. And I'll drive my husband crazy until and we'll go bankrupt if we have to, just to impress people. John says, when you get to the finish line and you look around and you turn and look back, you realize that was fool's passion. The world and the epithemia, the cravings and the desires are all passing away. Every last one of them. It is short-lived. In a brief moment, everything is gone. Everything is gone. The question that is implied in verse 17 is stated here. What are you really living for in the first place? He underscores that statement and that question by raising the other side of it when he says, and the world is passing away along with its desires. But then he says, but remember, he who does the will of God abides forever. You see, ladies and gentlemen, when you study the Bible, And when you do Bible study, make sure that primary statements in the text define the rest of it. Okay, don't take it out of context, because what are you trying to say here? I believe that what he's saying here is that whoever does the will of God, the world is passing away. And then he talks about all that is in the world, right? The lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, pride of life, the lust of the eyes, the empty, boastful, prideful, pride of life. He says that's all transient, strong transient, powerful transient, tempting but transient. But then he says, the one who does the will of God, did you get that? There's a transcendence here. The one who lives by God's purpose, the one who lives by God's intentions, the one who determines to live life based upon God's definition about what life is about, that person lives forever. Oh, that's so good. Some don't go horizontal for definition like that. We go vertical for a definition like that. So we impact the horizontal. You see, the thing is, if you can get your vertical right, your horizontal will be right. Between you and God, get it right, it's wonderful. Horizontal, everything will work out first, second, and third, and second, and fifth, and 90th, and on down the road. If you go horizontal for definition in life and assume the vertical, you will become like the system and the world in which we live. And guess what? Horizontal is passing away. You say, well, Brady, what in the world do I do about this then? What do we do? Well, let me give you a definition of worldliness. And then I want to finish, which I gave you a partial one in the beginning in part one. But let me give you a good, now that we've looked at all this, a good definition of worldliness. And I want to finish my time with you in this series by giving you a few suggestions, 3 big questions to ask. So here's the definition. Anything in your life, write this down, anything in your life that causes you to lose the enjoyment of the Father's love or your desire to do the Father's will is worldliness. Period. Anything in your life or mine, anything in your life or mine, anything that causes me to lose the enjoyment of the Father's love or our desires to do the Father's will is worldly. Agapao. Now, how do we overcome worldliness? Man, this is so tough. And the reason I'm looking at my notes and things is because I struggle with this myself, because I love good things. I love to shop. As many of you know, I'm not a shopaholic. I'm a purchaseaholic. I love Starbucks. You can send me, by the way, you can send me a gift card anytime you want to Starbucks. You can, or any men's clothing store. I love clothes. I'm a clothing fanatic, to the point of worldliness sometimes. So the question is, I've been thinking about this, how do we overcome it? I mean, really, we live in this world. We encounter 3,000 plus commercial images a day that tell us we need to take this, swallow this, buy this, eat this, drink this, put this on, drive this, put this in your hair. How do we overcome this worldliness as Christ followers, especially in the 21st century, where it's not just on TV, it's on the internet, it's everywhere. We even have images flashing on the side of our computers now that say, screens that say, hey, you need to do this. How do we overcome it? Well, again, I believe that 1 John 2:15 through 17, this text begs us to ask at least 3 questions. Let me give them to you in the next part. I'll be right back. Get to the next part 6 of Do Not Love the World, right here on Hope Givers, and we'll talk about those 3 questions.